As someone who grew up with... I always found it interesting to look back at gaming history and see what console did Bill Clinton play on. The Nintendo 64 had its initial launch in 1996 and was Nintendo's first 64-bit console. Did you know that? Did you know that Nintendo 64 was Nintendo's first 64-bit console? Many of Nintendo's franchises made their first jump to 3D graphics on this system, and it was quite a revolutionary console for Nintendo. That's why I will be discussing my thoughts and opinions and cover the Nintendo 64 era between 1996 and 2001. Nintendo! No! It's the Dizzy Dan, read the script! What's the first thing that comes to mind when talking about any game console? You know, the essential first and most important thing about them. Taking a shower. According to Wikipedia, the free encyclopedia, a shower is a place in which Okay, no, dude, I'm talking about the games, man. The Nintendo 64 released in Japan in June and North America in September of 1996. Alongside its release in North America were its launch titles, Pilot Wing 64 and Super Mario 64. In Japan, one more game... No. The console would get more and more games throughout the late 90s, many of which were quite memorable and iconic. When it comes to gameplay, the Nintendo 64 did, introduce full 3D graphics on a Nintendo console for the first time. Nothing that huge. The massive jump to 3D meant that many of the traditional controls and ways of moving around in video games had to now be tailored to this brand new so-called Z-axis. Take Super Mario 64 as an example. He moves now, but in 3D. He can also jump, but in 3D. Oh, and beware, he can take a nap as well. But in 3D. A lot of games seem to have gone towards the same direction as Super Mario 64 when it comes to 3D platformers. I mean, it's logical. It is basically game navigation like before, but tailored to the additional axis and its expanded capabilities. So, you could say it's basically not like before. But besides walking, running, and jumping around, the jump to 3D also allowed for many more creative choices that weren't thought of before, and multiple gameplay styles, mechanics, and features. In Super Mario 64, for instance, you jump into paintings when going into a level, and it actually looks like you're doing so visually. In boss fights, you can swing them around for an even more epic victory. Typical sports that would require much more depth could also be represented much better on the N64, like, say, Mario Golf. It also feels like with Nintendo 64's power, much more things can happen at once than its predecessor, allowing for more advanced and capable games. When you start up Super Mario 64, for instance, you're greeted with a title screen, a silly elastic Mario face you can mess with, multiple save selection, and when you actually get into the game, after Peach's greeting, the camera immediately floats and flexes around the map. A broadcasting locator recording Mario at the start of his adventure appears. You can walk, run, jump around, and explore the startup map, swim, and when you enter the large castle, go into that first room and jump into the painting, you enter the first level. And I can go on and on and on about everything that happens and can be done in Super Mario 64, as well as other games on the system. In Super Mario World, you navigate, use simple attacks on enemies, and win. Okay, but simplicity can be a very good thing too, though. My point is that the Nintendo 64's power opened up for even more possibilities. Another massive way the games changed was obviously, well, the graphics. Think about it. You're used to 16-bit graphics. Oh, and by the way, pretend that PlayStation didn't exist, okay? You're used to 16-bit graphics, maybe some illusion of 3D due to the SNES Super FX chip as well, but mostly what seems to be just more advanced and capable 16-bit sprites. And now bam, this will be gaming in 1996. Now you have 3D models, textures, shading, 3-dimensional animation, meaning that you need rigs now, and much more. Wait. I just found out about something. Banjo-Kazooie has voice acting? I think I'm going to talk about soundtracks instead, shall we? By the N64's time, we were already at a point where we no longer had to suffer through I think it's safe to say that the music on the Nintendo 64 sounds more like, well, music. There are songs I definitely would vibe to here. Like Bowser's theme absolutely slaps, man. Here, just take a look. Ah, crap. Yeah, hello, is this Nintendo? Yeah, hey, look, I have 500 bucks, okay? Just get me out of this and, you don't take bribes? What about 750? 850? 950. Okay, so my video is back up. Just for that, I am going to talk about a bad Nintendo 64 game now. What's that one job of Superman, the Man of Steel? What's his duty and mission he always has to prioritize? Flying through rings in an obstacle course. Man, this game received a ton of hate. What? I'm not gonna defend Superman 64 if that's what you're thinking. Oh, and the graphics were dunked on even by 90s standards. The entire game wasn't just lazy, it was... Okay, actually it was just lazy. I have now covered the handsome and the stinky in terms of general gaming on the Nintendo 64. Time to move on to... The Nintendo 64 was the last home console to use cartridges instead of discs. Until the Switch. This system also had a whopping 4 controller ports, which was highly unusual at the time. It kinda still is. The Nintendo 64 came with 4 megabytes of RAM. However, there was a certain accessory that allowed for 4 extra megabytes of RAM expanded into the console, doubling it to 8 megabytes. The Nintendo 64 Expansion Pack. Released in 1998, games that required it and could not function without this pack was Donkey Kong 64, The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. Most of the games supporting the expansion pack were usually just standalone N64 games where it wasn't required, but could definitely enhance the game experience with graphical improvements and sweet new added features. Most games' improvement with this add-on seemed to lean towards resolution, enabling up to a 640 by 480 pixel resolution. Others could improve frame rate instead, or in addition, as well as textures in very few cases. Let's talk about the controllers. Let's not talk about the Rumble Pack, an add-on released for the N64 a year earlier in '97. However, not for the console itself, but the controllers of the console. Wow, my controllers used to look weird. Now they can feel weird too! The Rumble Pack was introduced in a bundle with Star Fox 64, and it was praised for adding an immersive experience to the game. The Rumble Pack was also utilized by GoldenEye 007. Oh, and the N64 Rumble Pack was also quite revolutionary, as it led to more rumble controllers and haptic feedback for consoles to come. At Nintendo's Shoshinkai event of 1996, they announced the 64DD, also known as the Nintendo 64 Disk Drive. This magnetic floppy disk drive peripheral... You know what, I'll just call it an add-on. This add-on would enhance graphics and support much bigger games and 64 megabytes of data. Not only that, but users could download updates to their games online as well as store files. This console was highly anticipated and was scheduled for a 1997 release. However, after several delays and dwindling hype, the console didn't release until December of 1999 as a Japan exclusive through a mail order subscription. Only 9 games were released for the 64DD during its 1-year span between its launch and the discontinuation in February 2001, and around a total of 15,000 units were sold. This is also known as commercial failure. But okay, there were some interesting games released for the system. Among them were the Mario Artist games, which included Mario Artist Paint Studio, Talent Studio, and Polygon Studio. In addition to Communication Kit, which allowed users to share creation made within the mentioned games online. Paint Studio was a Mario-themed paint program, released in 1999, and could basically be described as Mario Paint 64. In Talent Studio, you make kinda like movies, but okay, it's basically Windows 3D Movie Maker, but you can make your own characters as well and import them from Polygon Studio. Polygon Studio. This one allows you to do 3D modeling. Now you know about the Mario Artist Suite, so scratch that Adobe subscription because this is the real deal. No, it's not, but actually do scratch that Adobe subscription because Adobe just sucks.
Hey, listen!
Oh wow, how did they manage to get Mario to look like this in the game? I do believe the advertising and promotional material for the Nintendo 64 is a very interesting area of its history. Starting with the game package and cartridge covers themselves, I feel like when it comes to the Nintendo 64, you kinda have to split the character's design jump to 3D into two categories: the in-game and the promotional representation of the character and our environments. You see, I think it was pretty clear that we did not want a nuclear explosion caused by the N64 system. That's why appealing Mario is on the covers, ads, posters, commercials, and weird geometric Mario inside the game itself. A render model used for print or even animation for film and TV at this time was vastly different from a video game model. You know, you would actually play the games and the frame repeats every 30 or 60 seconds, and the graphics were limited and not that much data and textures could be stored. On the other side, making renders for film and TV, but especially posters, allowed for much more high quality and actually visually appealing renders, like characters that look like characters. This is also why I believe it is way more fair to compare modern 3D Mario's design to the promotional designs of 3D Mario during the N64 era, especially when it comes to its general character design. But of course, we can't talk about the Nintendo 64 marketing without, well, 64. Nintendo weighed heavily into the 64-bit marketing, despite bits probably not being that main thing anymore. Everything was 64, Nintendo 64, Super Mario 64, and now wait just a second. This video of mine is number 64. Even the console's freaking logo has exactly 64 faces and 64 vertices. What's next? Donkey Kong commits insurance fraud 64? Oh, and of course, Get In or Get Out, which was Nintendo's addition to the cool kid product slogan thing, was also used in much of the N64's television commercials. Oh yeah, and we can't not mention probably the most iconic N64 commercial, the one from 1999 advertising the first Super Smash Bros. Game. So yeah, it's been mentioned now. In 1988, Sony and Nintendo established a contract where Sony would develop a CD-ROM add-on for the SNES titled the PlayStation. In addition, Sony planned to make an SNES-compatible Sony-branded console. It would play both SNES cartridges and a new CD format called Super Disc. Under the contract, Sony would retain international rights to every Super Disc game. In 1991, the PlayStation was to be announced at the Consumer Electronics Show, but Nintendo realized that the 1988 contract would basically hand Sony control over all games produced for the SNES CD-ROM. 2 days before the CES, Sony had found out that Nintendo had cancelled all plans for the Nintendo and Sony collaboration on the SNES CD-ROM without telling them. Nintendo was going to work with Philips, Sony's rival. Instead, Ken Kudagari, the one who conceived the idea for the PlayStation, tried to find out if this was true by calling multiple contacts, including Philips. However, this was to no avail. On day one of the Consumer Electronics Show, Sony announced their partnership with Nintendo and the PlayStation. The next day, Nintendo of America's chairman, Howard Lincoln, stepped on stage and revealed that they were now allied with Philips and would abandon Sony. Betrayal. Betrayal. Sony decided to develop their own game console instead. As Sony had no experience in game development, the console would rely on third-party games. Sony released the PlayStation on December 3rd, 1994 in Japan, and September 1995 in North America and Europe. PlayStation's use of discs led to cheaper production and large storage capacity, especially compared to the N64. Nintendo's cartridge-based Nintendo 64 released about a year later. Despite the PlayStation being 32-bit, contrary to Nintendo's 64-bit system, it basically didn't matter as discs proved superior financially, commercially, and capably, specifically in terms of storage. In other words, PlayStation won the game. However, the Nintendo 64, even if not outperforming PlayStation, still managed to be a very successful and influential console. Well, that's about it for this video. I hope you enjoy.
Well. Looks like someone is about to get a taste of his own medicine.
Who are you?
It's Nintendo 64 graphics, what did you expect? Anyways, I have had enough of people dissing my game.
No, whoa, what are you doing? No, whoa.
That'll teach you to make fun of my game. Either say like one good thing about my game, or take the risk by having only one shot at either roasting me or embarrassing yourself with a diss track.
Well, hey, would you look at that? Actually, wait, no, I don't. Just look at the stats. Superman 64 is bold to assume this mockery would ever get sold. I'm almost getting this here, so I'll just be addressing why your game couldn't be more depressing. First of all, there's a lot of things to unpack. Unbelievable, no, because your game is whack. Superman 64, what a chore. Oh wait, chore wouldn't be fair, at least I clean the floor. All you do is fly through rings in the skies? Man, I need to cleanse my eyes. Let me just give you a very long lecture on why your game has such ugly architecture. I believe there's one word that wouldn't seem so crazy. I think it was lazy. This so-called game of steel, it is safe to say that it's very real and the game just lacks all appeal. It kinda makes me wanna crush it with an automobile. Dog, this isn't the Man of Steel Clark Kent. It looks like his dollar store ripoff, Mark the Mint. Yo, insane Superman 3D game? What a shame. Wanna subscribe? Subscribe! Did you like the video? Like the video! Stay tuned for more entertaining videos about entertainment history.